Hi, welcome to Exploring the Illusion of Free Will. My name is George Ortega, and today's episode is called Free Will and Morality. Pragmatic, not fundamental. Okay, and this is episode number 127, and we're taping it on Tuesday, June 18th, 2013. Okay, now, before I get to the theme, I want to really briefly, last episode I spent about 10 minutes with the introduction and explaining why free will is impossible. I want to try to zoom through this so we can, spend more time on the topic. All right, so what is free will? Free will, if we had a free will, stuff would be actually up to us. When it's not, actually we're puppets, absolutely nothing is up to us. If we had a free will, we would decide, think, say, feel whatever we wanted to without anything that's not in our control, like our unconscious, dictating to us, making us do what we do, like our genes, whatever. Okay, why is this important? Okay, just a Searle a quote by the 13th most cited post-1900 philosopher in the world, John Searle. He said that for free will to be acknowledged by the world to be an illusion would be a bigger revolution in our thinking than Einstein or Copernicus or Galileo or Newton or Darwin. It would alter our whole conception of our relation with the universe. That's how big this is. There couldn't be anything bigger, right? This is huge, okay? So now, and like the reason I'm doing this show is because the free will belief creates a lot of havoc, creates a lot of problems in the world that wouldn't, that we wouldn't have if we had the belief. Okay. Now, why is free will impossible? Again, I'm going to zoom through this. So, if you don't catch it this time, catch the shows on Exploring the Illusion of Free Will. Google it, see the site, or YouTube. They're all on YouTube. All right. So, basic reason is causality. Everything has a cause. Everything you do has a cause, and there's a cause to that cause, and there's a cause to that cause. And the causal antecedents to everything you do regress back to before you were born. Game over for free will. You can't have a free will. What's happening before you're born are making you do everything you do. It's a chain of cause and effect. Some people say, well, not everything has a cause. Fine, if certain things don't have causes, that means you can't be causing them with your free will. Some people say some things can cause themselves. Causa sui, this Latin term. No, because if the only thing that could potentially cause itself would be the universe at the very beginning. We can't understand that. But after that, even if your decisions could cause themselves, which is an absurd notion, you wouldn't be causing them, they'd be causing themselves. Again, no free will. Last thing is spiritual. My decisions are spiritual, they're not physical, and so causality doesn't apply. Wrong. Causality is a concept that both applies to the physical and the spiritual, okay? And your decisions are, your quote-unquote spiritual decisions are actually physical because they take place in a moment in time. Once they occupy a moment in time because you have to make them at a certain point in time, they're part of the physical fabric of the universe, period. All right, so we're done with that. Okay, now, why do people believe in free will when the evidence refuting it is so compelling? Well, the first reason, they can't help it. You can't blame them. If you believe in free will, even after getting this, don't feel bad about it, because the reason you still believe it is because the universe is making you. You have no choice but to believe in free will if you do, and you have no choice but to understand it's an illusion if you don't. So, all right, but anyway, a lot of people hold on to free will belief because what psychologists term motivated reasoning. In other words, they understand the logic, the very strong, clear logic why free will is impossible, but then they've got these emotional needs, these emotional desires. And one of these emotional needs and desires is very much related to morality. People fear. Fear is an emotion. It's a powerful, motivating emotion. People fear that without the belief in free will, our entire civilization is going to collapse. Law and order is going to collapse. Everybody's going to be it's going to be anarchy. It's horrible. That they believe that. So they can't allow themselves to be guided by their reason because of this fear. And I'm going to show how it's a bit irrational. It just doesn't make sense. They just haven't thought it through. So actually, let's do that now. All right. Why won't morality collapse to the extent that we understand that free will is an illusion? Okay, that nobody has it, nobody ever has had it. Nobody ever can have it. All right. The first thing is we're hedonic creatures. This isn't up to us either. Okay. We don't choose. In other words, hedonic means that we seek pleasure and avoid pain. I'm going to devote the entire next episode to this. So basically, that's what we do. We're hardwired to do this. In other words, like if we're like, as an analogy, let's say we're a robot and we're programmed every time we go into a wall to make a left turn instead of a right. Okay. That's not a decision. That's, the robot has to do that. So anytime we're faced with whatever, we're hardwired to seek the most pleasant. Now, it gets a little involved, but I'll go into the next show. So in other words, like what I'm trying to say is like because we're hedonic creatures, we're not going to allow people to get away with saying, well, listen, I don't have a free will, so you can't blame me. Okay, it's not going to make sense in a very pragmatic way. That's why the title of this is like, morality. We're going to like assume or impose pragmatic moral responsibility as opposed to fundamental moral responsibility. In other words, we're going to know that people aren't fundamentally responsible for what they do, for what we do, but we're going to have to pragmatically take steps. And I'll go into this a bit more down the line. Okay. So like this it's not my fault excuse is not going to work, because we're not going to let it work. Another hardwire imperative that we have is morality. We always seek to do what we consider right. Sometimes in hindsight we realize, well, maybe it wasn't right. But so in other words, like, so it's not going to be right, it's not going to feel right for us to have other people get away with doing wrong or have ourselves get away with doing wrong just because we don't have a free will. We may want to like not become angry with them, and we may not like want to feel the pain of guilt when we do wrong, but that's a different matter than fundamentally holding ourselves morally responsible. Okay. And that leads us into this. Like, for example, another reason why civilization is not going to collapse, because even though we don't have a free will, we understand that reward is an incentive and punishment is a deterrent. In other words, like this is classic, operant conditioning in psychology. Basically, reward versus punishment. You can condition an organism, an animal, a human being to do certain acts by providing incentives or rewards when they do it, or you can disincentivize them from certain acts by punishing them. There's numerous, thousands probably of experiments that demonstrate this. So reward and punishment work as motivators and deterrents. Okay, so that's one reason. That's another reason civilization is not going to collapse. We're going to do that. So punishment is conditioning. Okay, so then you ask, all right, so what is the difference going to be? Why? How will the world be different to the extent that not just a few people, but ultimately everybody is on board with the idea that nobody ever has a free will, nobody ever can. How's it going to change everything? Okay. First of all, there's a lot of hate in the world. I mean, look at the Middle East, look at American politics, with conservatives and liberals, Republicans, Democrats, and all. People hate. You've got the Tea Party. You've got there are a lot of people that hate a lot of people out there. It's insane. It's sick. It's not pleasant. It's not very healthy for individuals or for society. Okay, so what happens is to the extent that you understand that free will is impossible, you lose every logical, rational reason to hate someone. You might hate what they did. Somebody goes around killing people, whatever. You're going to hate the fact that that's happening. You're going to hate the fact that that's creating pain for a lot of people. But you wouldn't logically hate the person. More important than that, a lot of people who do wrong in the world, who go and kill people, whatever, they do it based on hatred. They hate a certain group of people, so they're going to go out and kill some of them. It's sick, it's insane, and it's based on the free will belief. Okay, if they understood that the people that they were hating were not responsible for what they were doing, that it was completely not up to them, again, they would lose all rationale for that hatred. And again, this isn't going to play out maybe in a year or maybe 4 or 5. It might play out in a generation, but when everyone gets this, that nobody has a free will, it's going to be pretty impossible to hate anyone for anything. reasonably. Some people could just lose their, temporarily just, lose it, whatever. But, logically, reasonably, there's not going to be a reason for that. Okay. So what happens is, to the extent also that we don't hate people, there are a lot of people in this world that are very unfortunate. A lot of times we blame, there's about 2 billion people on the planet that live on less than $2 a day, and a lot of times we blame them for being so poor, which is really sick because our policies, our economic policies as part of the first world, the industrialized nations are actually a very strong cause of why they're poor. We keep them poor so we can buy our products less expensively. It's sick, but that's the way it is. But so what happens is with people like that, we'll blame them for being poor. We have our jails and prisons are filled with people who are very unfortunate. They're very unlucky. What they did, however wrong it is, and nobody's disputing or arguing that it's wrong, whatever they did, to the extent that it was wrong, it's wrong. It's always going to remain wrong. But to the extent that we blame them and hate them and, attribute free will to them, we're going to be hating them. They're going to be hating us in return because I think a lot of them understand that the reason they're in jail, for example, if you're in a minority amidst a population, your numbers are going to be in jail and prison much more than the majority, whatever. There's kind of this group competition going on also. But the idea is that it's more than that. So it's not just the hatred that it cultivates. To the extent that society labels certain individuals as criminals, convicts, just evil people, and you've got this whole, the media, politicians, these mindless people who just I don't know how they get elected, but that's unfortunate. But to the extent that that kind of reasoning is cultivated, and we just see these people as just horrible, evil convicts, criminals, they're going to see themselves that way too. This is classic psychology. This isn't speculation. This isn't theory, hypothetical. This is the way it is. What happens is if we see them that way, they're going to be much more likely to see themselves that way. To the extent they see themselves that way, that's how you create career criminals. They say to themselves, well, they're telling me I'm evil. I guess they must be right. They're in power. There are, so many more of them than there are of us, whatever. So again, they're going to integrate and adopt and express that self-identity as a convict, as an evil person. All right? So to the extent that we as a society, understand that they don't have a free will, one, we no longer hate them, two, we no longer identify them as vile, cruel, evil, convicts, just evil people. Okay? And to the extent that we do that, they're not going to see themselves that way, and you're going to see a far less rate of recidivism. You're going to see a lot of criminals going into the criminal justice system, understanding was we're going to treat them with compassion. We'll say, listen, all right, you did something wrong. You're hurting people. We can't allow you to continue doing that. So we're going to have to separate you for a while. But while we're doing that, we're going to try to see why you did what you did. We're going to try to correct your behavior. To lead you to repentance, to lead you to understand where it was wrong and stuff. And we're going to do this with compassion, not with hatred and animosity and just all these vile emotions. Okay. So, let's see. All right, and what happens is a lot of times it's not about other people. A lot of times we hold ourselves fundamentally, morally responsible for what we do because of this free will belief. And when we do that, you'll have a lot of people who decades, let's say they were in a war and they had to kill somebody, or let's say they were young and they did something really stupid in their youth, and they're 3-4 decades later, they're still blaming themselves because they're holding this free will belief and still punishing themselves, because guilt can be kind of a recognition that you've done something wrong, and that's kind of that's just a cognitive simple recognition. But the problem with guilt is that it also has a component of punishing. A lot of times when we feel guilty, we'll feel the need to punish ourselves, So what happens is so we punish ourselves a lot of times by feeling badly, by expressing and feeling negative feelings. All right, so to the extent that we as a population, as a civilization, overcome this insidious, this absolutely stupid, mindless free will belief that I can't blame anyone for because it's not up to us, to the extent we overcome it, fine, we're going to have a conscience. Our conscience isn't going to go away. We're still going to understand when we did something wrong. Sometimes we may not, but that's a different matter altogether. But, we'll understand when we did wrong, but we're not going to punish ourselves for it in the same way. Again, sometimes punishment acts as a deterrent, whatever, but, because I was talking about what we were talking about before. But even in these cases, it would be like minimal punishment. It would be like, fine, all right, I did something wrong in the past. I recognize it was wrong. I recognize the seriousness of it, and I'm going to vow I'm going to work on not doing it again, okay? And for a lot of us, that works. Understanding the wrongness of it is enough to correct the behavior. We don't have to suffer the self-guilt, the self-punishment that goes with the free will belief. Okay. So what happens again? Another of the differences that will happen once we go from this mistaken belief that human beings are fundamentally morally responsible to the correct understanding that human beings can be held pragmatically morally responsible, even though nothing is up to us. Once we get that, once we understand that free will is an illusion and must be, then instead of focusing so much energy, because we do this, we expend so much energy on the recrimination part of this, the blaming, the accusing, you did this, the targeting of individual. We would move from that kind of distracting, emotion-laden, non-productive, often escalating, and very often just it makes things worse, strategy. We would move from that, this distraction, to addressing the situation. And again, if you did something wrong, okay, and let's say society helps you understand that you did something wrong, and let's say society doesn't believe you have a free will, you don't believe you have a free will. Under that scenario, you're not going to feel victimized. You're not going to feel like a target. You're not going to feel guilty. Because you're not going to be guilty. I mean, it's not going to be your fault, and society is going to be freed that hatred that because again, when you target people as evil, that doesn't feel good. It separates us from each other. So again, what happens is, to the extent that you're not distracted by that blaming component that is absolutely necessary with the free will belief, that's what the free will belief is about. You free yourselves, you free your energy to directly understanding the dynamics or whatever it is that needs to be dealt with, again, in a far more direct way than through the free will belief. Okay. So as an example of how this actually plays out in our everyday lives today, think of all right, toddlers. I don't know how old toddlers are, 2, 3 years old, who knows. Toddlers, we understand that toddlers don't have a free will. In other words, they're young, they're inexperienced, their reasoning abilities haven't matured yet. They have these limitations. A lot of what they do, they have no idea that they're doing wrong. They have no idea why they're doing a lot of what they're doing. We get this. So when we're dealing with a toddler, it's kind of they have a special exemption to this nonsensical, very harmful free will belief. We understand. They don't know any better. They're doing the best they can. Okay, and what's the result of that? We treat them with compassion. We're not gonna, we're not gonna aggress against them. We're not, you don't aggress against a toddler. You don't, become really, really punish them severely and stuff. you try not to punish them at all, because they, at that age, they don't even understand the concept of punishment. They don't understand why it's happening in many cases. So just how we treat toddlers is a good example that we already know how to navigate certain situations without resorting to the attribution of fundamental moral responsibility that comes with free will belief, and we know how to do it well. All right, so it's simply, it's just a matter of translating how we treat toddlers, the compassion and the kindness with which we treat toddlers, to ourselves and each other. Okay, I mean, it's not like we have to treat each other as kids, as babies, whatever, but the fundamental concept is you treat others with compassion and respect and kindness, because you understand that whether they're 2 years old or 20 or 40 or 60 or 80, they can't but have done what they did. Okay, that's the salient consideration. All right, so that's going to create a much, much kinder world. You're still, again, we're still going to have laws of what is good for the individual in society to do and what is good for the individual in society not to do. We're still going to have rules. We're still going to have rewards and punishments, but especially the punishments. The punishments won't be nearly as severe, and I have a feeling like, to the extent that like let's say you have a family member who ends up in prison and is severely punished for something. Chances are even though you're not in prison, you might harbor really negative feelings towards society for treating your brother, whatever, the way it's treated them. Okay, so the idea is, like, to the extent that, to the extent we understand that nobody has a free will, sure, we'll punish, but everybody will understand that we'll be punishing not because they deserve to suffer and feel pain because they're such evil people and all that, which is such nonsense, such a horrible, hateful thing to believe. But from the standpoint that, listen, we've got to do whatever we believe is necessary to maintain order, but it's going to be the minimum amount of punishment. In other words, so much of the punishment that happens in today's criminal justice system, it's not about, correcting their behavior. It's about holding them fundamentally responsible, and it's about just desserts. You did something horrible, so we're going to do something horrible to you. All right, and again, that, if you understand, if you see the way the world is today, with all our problems, and with climate change, they're not going to get better for decades, unfortunately, and the challenges are going to get greater. If you see our mindset, you can understand how we have so many problems. Okay, for example, with the wars. I mean, like, so many of the wars we have, the Middle East is just like, really, really going through a difficult time now. We went through World War II, World War I, the Civil War, Vietnam, Korea, Desert Storm, just so many wars. I mean, if we as a world understood that those people in those other lands, first of all, it's not up to them. It's so many of these, they have dictators, like with Iraq. I mean, it's not like the people of Iraq, had anything to say in what Hussein was doing because he was a dictator. Yet, Bush, and our country, and along with the British and all, killed 1 million Iraqis. That was insane. That was absolutely insane. So the idea is, like, to the extent that we have this belief in free will, we're going to hold groups of people, entire nations, countries, populations responsible, and we're going to want to afflict them with pain and stuff, and that's sick. That just exacerbates the problem. That just makes it worse. It just cultivates a world where of vengeance and revenge, because they're going to try to get us back. That's what happens. That's what 9/11 was about. So again, like, to the extent we understand that free will is an illusion, that nobody is really fundamentally responsible for anything, we still have to negotiate treaties and do geopolitical, whatever, governance, but it'll be done with far more compassion, without the hatred, without the vengeance. Okay. Got about 3 minutes left. Now, all right. I would guess that people aren't going to really be on board with this, really understand it, really understand how important it is for years, if not a generation. I'm hoping that over this next generation, in 20 years or so, it's hard to believe that people will have not gotten this, especially because of the internet and all. In other words, like this whole, free will refutation revolution began, for the most part, in 2010, in April 2010. And right now it's out there. People are right now people are in a state of denial about it. There's a lot of thinkers that get it, but they don't want to get it. It's like we were talking about before. They have this motivated reasoning, They want to believe they have a free will, but the facts are there. They're irrefutable. Within the next 10 years, there's going to be a lot of books published on this. God willing, a major documentary is going to explain this. And what happens is fine. All right, it may take a generation to get this done. So what happens is all right, the greater benefits of this won't be reflected today. In other words, you can adopt, to the extent that you understand that nobody has a free will, that others and you don't have a free will, that's going to help your life personally. You're going to navigate your challenges much more pleasantly and sanely than if you hold on to belief. All right, but it's going to be hard, right? Because within a culture where everybody believes in free will, the legal system believes in it. It's a Supreme Court. These guys are idiots. I mean, how could you be on the Supreme Court and not understand that people don't have a free will? Free will is the law of the land, okay? So to the extent that we believe that, it's going to be difficult to counter this cultural conditioning, okay? But once we do that in a generation or so, it's going to be a brand new world. It's going to be, imagine a world where there's no rational, logical reason for hating anyone. You might hate the things people do, but you can't rationally hate another or yourself for anything. That's going to be a major, major accomplishment. Okay, and it just may happen sooner than we think it may because of climate change, because all it'll take is one major hurricane in a major city like New York City or something, and that could cause a collapse of the economic system. So to the extent that something dire like that would happen, then a lot of people who are in power would understand the benefits of understanding that free will is an illusion. That would help out. All right, so anyway, climate change may help us to understand this sooner than we think, but it's unfortunate. All right, well, thanks for watching, and we'll just go into this until you get it. Thanks.